Yo, what is up? What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another wonderful Dolo episode of the Nance Cast. I think I might rebrand. Might change the name of this to the Toxic Manosphere podcast. And that's just a little shout out to some friends online. That's a shout out to a little bit of, I guess you would call it internet drama. But it is the case now that like all the evidence of said drama has been, as far as I know, has been erased from the internet. So it's a good thing that the few people who were there for it were there for it. Is it a good thing? I don't know. Maybe not. I don't really know if internet drama is a good thing. I think it's probably not. And I don't know. Yeah, it is what it is. So if you get the reference, the Toxic Manosphere podcast, then shout out to you. If you don't get the reference, don't worry about it because it's dumb internet shit anyway. And honestly, this is dumb internet shit. Yeah, these solo dolo episodes. It seems to be the case that like all I do is just kind of have these like neurotic spirals. And I don't know, I think they probably like annoy some people probably. They probably like really piss some people off. Like some people probably are like, man, I fucking hate this guy. This guy's so full of shit. Like he's trying to perform some kind of like internet authenticity. And it's just so disgusting and I see right through it and, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure there's people that feel that way or have felt that way in the past and have since moved on. And I don't know, sure, maybe. But also like I feel driven. I feel like there's something inside me that's trying to get outside me. And I think that's what language is. I think that's what all attempts at communication are. I think that's like the Platonic ideal of discourse would be a person with something stuck on the inside, trying to scrape it off the inside of their skull, like, you know, dried gum on the underside of a school desk, and somehow extract it, you know, maybe take it out of the eye socket or the ear or the nose and hold it up to the world, for the world to really be able to see and examine that dried gum glob in all its glory. And it's just funny that we find so many ways to fuck that up. Now, I do think it's true in the first place that's impossible. And I think that's the beauty and the joy of kind of being a human. People talk about lack or negativity or a remainder or some kind of surplus or whatever when it comes to like being a human. And I think there are definitely some people who think that's just like psychobabble. I mean, I've seen it in comment sections, kind of accusing myself and maybe some others, but you know, we'll stick with me of just doing like this mystical babbling on about like lack and negativity and this and that. And I get it because first of all, there is like a surplus of dudes on the internet who just babble they just kind of say words and they kind of string words together in ways that they find maybe artful or maybe pleasing for whatever reason, that have like a certain flavor, or like it's like you're in the living room, and someone's cooking in the kitchen, and the smell kind of wafts in, and you're not really sure what it is, but you can kind of smell meat. You can maybe smell, I don't know, bell peppers or onions, maybe. Like you get a general idea, but nothing definite. So it's kind of like that. Like there's a lot of guys on the internet who just kind of talk, and girls, and non-specified people in general. Guys is a gender neutral term. The way I use it, guys and dudes and bitch, and like there's tons of words that are non-gender specific. Thank you, the English language. I was kind of indoctrinated into a genderless social field by virtue of being a native English speaker. So, is English woke, or do we have to cancel the English language next and all start speaking Italian? Because English is largely gender neutral. There's so many gender neutral terms in English. We have to cancel algebra because it's, from the Islamist fundamentalists. And now we have to cancel the English language because it's from the gender queers, and go back to speaking Italian or something with, hard and fast rules about gender. Anyway, I'm rambling. There are a lot of guys, there are a lot of people on the internet who do this thing where they just kind of use words that have this like vague, wafty, odorific insinuation of like depth. But they never really say anything. They just kind of ramble on and on and on and on and on. And yeah, for sure. And maybe I am one of those guys, but also, I don't think so. But it doesn't really matter either way. But when I use terms or notions like lack or like negativity or the remainder or, the surplus or subjectivity even, like it has to do with that, the gulf that kind of separates the inside of my head and the outside of my head. Like I think ultimately at the end of the day, all language boils down to asking the question of like me or not me. Maybe asking the question or making the assertion, or maybe asserting the question or demanding a response from the world or whatever. But it's that tension. It's me, I, and then everything else. Me, everything else. I think that's kind of where language stems from. I think somewhere along the line in the development of human beings, we developed an awareness of the kind of the symbolic order, the symbolic register. There is a world that you're just kind of in as like an ape. Like when we were just apes, we were just in the world. And it was what it was. But then there like we developed like cognitive capabilities more and more and more, and we started to have like a surplus of like cognition. And we started attaching meaning to the world around it. So there's like the real, right? There's the world, the real, and then there's the imaginary, which is made up of like our sensorium and our sensory inputs. So along with the imaginary, we started to attach meaning, and that meaning was tied to feeling. So feeling is this weird thing that it's half imaginary, like it's half like sensory input, but then there's something else too. Like it feels good, man, or feels bad, man. So there's this kind of symbolic element to our perception and our perception of ourself in the world, like rooted in the world, but also detached from the world. And our body starts to take on significance, and trees and rocks and rivers and deer and, clouds and the sun, like all these things start to take on not just like actual concrete existence, and not just like mediated experience, not just like our phenomenological interface with the world, but there actually starts to develop a symbolic interface with the world, and we start to recognize ourselves. We become self-aware, and when we become self-aware, we become aware of the disconnect, the difference between me and the world around me, the difference between me and all the other things that move around and look like me and sound like me and act like me and could be me, but there's some weird feeling I get. They're not me. I'm me. And there's something else. And it's from that I think many interesting things start to happen. I think that's where language comes from, like that dissonance, that tension, that dialectic relationship. I think we also start to realize that we have this interiority, we have this inner experience, and so does everyone else. And so then we start to realize, oh, the things I do or the things I don't do, like just me, my presence has this like symbolic meaning in the interiority or in the interior, or the inner experience of all these other things, all these other creatures that move around like me and eat and poop and sleep and die and are born and all this stuff. And you start to understand, like, there is a difference between base reality and then what's going on in everyone else's head. And that's a different type of self. Like there's the actual self, like the physical self, the body, the precarious metabolic meat bag that is the self, or that the self rides around on or in. But then there's also like the symbolic self, the identity. So we develop language, we develop the notion of identity, we develop the notion of your identity carrying forth separately from your actual physical embodied body. So yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting things that go on. But I'm not an anthropologist, and who cares about all that stuff? Because that was, thousands and thousands and thousands and dozens and maybe hundreds of thousands of years ago. I mean, I do care about it. It's definitely interesting. And there have been a lot of people who have written about it. But anyway, when I talk about lack and negativity and subjectivity and stuff, that's what I'm referring to. The disconnect, the gap, the gulf. It's like a spark plug. In a spark plug, there's a gap. And it's like a little diode, and there's a little arc, little electric arc that like jumps from one part of the spark plug through empty space to the other part of the spark plug. That's the gap. So we could say that arc, the arc of subjectivity, and the arc of language. It's never going to be like, you don't have direct access to my inner experience, and I don't have the ability to take what's in my head and scrape it off the inside like the dried gum and pull it out of my eyeball and hold it up to you so you can observe and examine and interface with it. There's always going to be a little bit of fuzziness. So the world we see is the world of language, is this kind of symbolic world. And we always see it through like a thin, gauzy mist or haze of interpretation, of implied meaning, of consequences and repercussions and interpretation and misrecognition and all that. And that's what language is. Language is constantly trying to make up for the inefficiencies of language itself. And that's, again, like I said, like the joy and the beauty of being a human subject and having language and using language. We have no choice but to like have faith and give grace if we want to get along, and if we want to be legible, if we want to be heard and understood and recognized, we have to do the same for the other. And in doing the same, in doing that for the other, we're also giving that grace to ourselves as well, because we're also opening up ourselves to that like inefficiency and that imperfection. And you can't communicate without first really onboarding that understanding that there is no such thing as like perfect communication, perfect understanding, perfect knowledge. The cool thing about that is having like relationships with people. The more work you guys do together, the bigger and stronger and taller a scaffolding you build to support that flow of communication. And that's a really hard thing to do in general, but it's just getting harder and harder to do nowadays when everything is on demand, when everything is in this hyper-connected world where you legitimately have access to almost anything you could possibly imagine at the tip of your thumb. Like all you have to do is, click a few buttons, maybe type a few characters, click a few links maybe, and you could be transported across like the known universe. And we're not really spending time with others anymore. We're not really spending time soliciting the attention of others. We're really only spending time like soliciting our own attention, because it's always like this reflected attention. Like the internet ultimately serves as a giant mirror for our own fascination with ourselves. So when we go on and we post things, or we leave comments, or we engage in live chats, or we engage in communities, or whatever, we may simulate the activity of communicating or engaging in discourse with the other. But because it never grounds out, because it's always in this always on demand, hyper connected churn, it's like never ending thing. It's never actually like cashing out, and people never are concerned with cashing out. It's like when you're driving a car that's all old and beat up and really fucked up, and you don't want to shut down the engine because you're pretty confident that once you shut down the engine, you're not going to be able to turn the car back on. A lot of cars have this problem when they have like a bad alternator, or a bad battery. Like you jump start the car and the alternator runs the car, and so you can keep it running and it's good to go. But if the battery's bad, it won't take a charge. So the minute you shut the car off, the battery's still going to be dead and you can't start the car again. So you just leave it running. It's a very common issue with, maybe it used to be, I don't know anymore. Because you don't really, I don't know, at least I don't really have those experiences anymore. It used to happen all the time. It used to happen to me. It used to happen to people I know. People would talk about it. We'd be at work. You'd have to get a jump from work in order to drive home. You'd have to get a jump from your neighbor in the morning in order to get to work, and repeat that process until you could afford to go buy a new battery. And largely, batteries aren't that expensive. Maybe $100. If you got a fancy car or whatever, it might be $150 or whatever. But yeah, I don't really know if that's something people deal with anymore nowadays or not, because I don't really know what people deal with nowadays, because people don't at least from my perspective, seem to have the same type of interaction. Now, instead of talking about your piece of shit car, and instead of asking someone for a jump start, it seems like you're more interested in proclaiming your political beliefs. Seems like you're more interested in proclaiming that if you disagree with me, or if you don't hold the same beliefs as me, you're a bad person. You're a terrible person. And you are the cause for all the suffering in the world. Or maybe you're not the cause, but you're at least complicit in it. How dare you hold those views? How dare you perform such a horrible speech act? But maybe that's just me in my life, like the way it is now. I just have fewer opportunities for those interactions where you talk about having a bad battery in your car, or you ask somebody for a jump start. But anyway, if you do have a bad battery in your car, I miss those days. Those, in some respects, were the good old days. I used to have a car. I had a '76 Monte Carlo. I've had several lowriders. My '76 Monte Carlo was a beast, dude. That thing was long. The seats were not bolted down, so like if you hit the gas too hard, the seat would flop back. And it had the little like 7-inch chain steering wheel, and I had 13-inch spoke rims on it. They were not Dayton's; they were knockoffs. And not the knockoff Dayton's, but they were like dupes, Dayton dupes. I used to drive that car, and it used to overheat on me all the time. It had a bad water pump, so if I sat for too long with the engine running, it would overheat. So I would like drive, and then I would get to like a stop sign or stoplight or whatever. Not a stop sign, but at a stoplight, I would have to like turn the engine off, and then turn it back on and go when it went green. And sometimes I would drive with the hood unlatched, like not fully unlatched, but just half unlatched to get more airflow over the engine, to try to keep it a little bit cooler. One time I was driving with the hood popped, and it was fully unlatched, and the hood came up while I was driving on the freeway. And the hood on that car was huge. I want to say, I'm not exaggerating, it was at least 7 feet long. And this is a coupe. It's a two-door coupe. It has a back seat. But the Monte Carlo, go on Google and Google it. 1976 Monte Carlo. MonteCarlo. Monte Carlo. Cool car. Super cool car. But the huge hood. Huge car in general. It was a coupe, but it was just huge. This was back in the day when American cars were huge. And now American cars are almost non-existent. Everything is a crossover or a gigantic truck that kills pedestrians and bike riders. But yeah, I was driving on the freeway, and the hood caught the air and just came up. So I'm like cruising, going like 60, 65, whatever, on the freeway. Can't see shit. The hood's up. I got a little 7-inch steering wheel, and I have to like steer and just like slowly decelerate until I can get to the side of the freeway and like pull off into the rocks, and get out, and then like slam the hood down. And it was cool. It was ridiculous. That also happened to me in a pickup truck. I had a 66 Apache, 66 Chevy C20. And same thing happened. The hood popped up, but that hood was way smaller, and I was able to see more. I was able to see through the gap, and I, pulled over and got the hood back down and everything. But yeah, I've had the hood pop up on me multiple times in my life driving down the freeway. And those were the good old days. I miss those days. I miss dealing with shit like that. Yeah. Anyway, welcome to the Solo Dolo Toxic Manosphere podcast, where I ramble and do this neurotic spiral thing and piss you off. But I hope, I hope you're here. I hope you're listening. I hope you smell what I'm stepping in. I hope you're picking up what I'm putting down when it comes to lack, when it comes to negativity, subjectivity, the remainder, this surplus that can't be incorporated or integrated. um, because it just can't. It's on the inside of my head like dried gum, and there's just no way to scrape it off and get it out for you to look at and examine. Now, like I said, we can develop frameworks that support shared understanding, shared interpretation, shared situatedness with respect to an item or an object or a concept or a notion. But it's never going to be perfect because there's just this gap. And it's this tiny electrical arc of subjectivity that kind of completes the subject and makes the magic happen. So be happy with the knowledge that you are this little electrical arc of subjectivity. Because without it, the engine wouldn't run. Unless you're a diesel. Then they don't use a spark. They use glow plugs. They just heat up. But we're not diesel engines, friends. We are gasoline engines. Hey, if you're like me, then you're poor and you're sick and you're tired of everything getting worse. And it feels like there's just no hope for tomorrow. Lucky for you, I'm giving a special discount on my for my audience at Rocco's Insurance Company. All you have to do is stay on the internet and never leave and never put down the phone or never turn off the computer or the TV and never go outside again. All you have to do is go to roccoify.com/basilisk insurance, enter code NANCE, NANCE, and we will all take part in bringing forth our new glorious leader to rescue us and save us all from the doldrums of daily life. You never have to worry about anything ever again. Don't worry. We're about to make the robotic savior who's going to come down and set us all free. So stay with me, friends. Never, ever, ever turn off the internet again. Never, ever, ever look up from your device. Never, ever, ever touch someone you love. Spend time with them and do something meaningful and share a moment without recording it on any device. Never do any of those things. Stay online all the time. Go to roccoify.com/basilisk, promo code Nance, and all your troubles will wither away like so many tears in rain. Thanks for dropping in, folks. Remember, that's rocco.com/basilisk to get your Basilisk insurance policy. Don't worry, everyone. The future is coming and it's bright. 10% discount, or maybe 25% discount. Thanks, friends. Bye. But anyway, like I was saying, it feels like there's something on my mind that I want to get out. I want to exercise the demon somehow. And I don't really know exactly what it is. I know it has to do with politics and political activity and the idea of politics and the question of whether or not politics is worth engaging in anymore. It has to do with identity categories and social activity and like whether or not what we do nowadays is real social congress, if it's real human congress, or if it's this like severed simulation that takes place on screens and that's caught up in a churn and it never really cashes out. And when I talk about like the churn and being caught up in the simulation and nothing ever really cashing out, I do think things very much can and do cash out, but it takes a little bit of intentional prohibition or intentional repression even, or intentional action, discipline on the part of the subject in question. You have to decide, okay, I'm going to take a step back. I'm gonna put down the internet and I'm gonna go do something in real life. And that's not always like the best thing to say. That's not like the best way to get across the meaning, because a lot of times you don't have to actually put the internet down. A lot of times what we do that does live on the internet and is only on the internet when it comes to whatever it is I'm talking about. And I guess what I'm talking about is like trying to communicate, trying to engage in discourse, trying to share ideas, trying to do theory, develop theory, push theory, do research, engage with the other, this and that. So it's not so much about literally putting down the internet and going and doing something in real life. But I think that's like a metaphor for, I don't know, just taking a step back and being less certain. Putting down the conch shell and letting things sink in, and maybe being a little less concerned with the optics of things and being a little less concerned with like foregone conclusions, and really just being open to what's going on in front of you. What situation are you engaged in or trying to intervene in? What's at stake? Why are you even engaging in the first place? Like, are you just engaging because you're like libidinally trapped? Or does it really matter? Or like, is it real? Is it a real project? Like I talk with people about ideas, and it matters to me because I'm developing, at least for myself anyway, if for no one else, I'm developing ideas. I'm trying to work on articulating things. I'm trying to work on examining things and understanding things in a certain way, be it for a short story I'm trying to write, or be it for something I'm reading at the time. It's something I'm like struggling with and grappling with, and really trying to like understand, well, are they saying X, Y, and Z, or are they saying A, B, and C, or could they be saying, LMNOP? Like it's real. There's a real project attached to it. It's not just because I think I have to. And I think a lot of the stuff that goes on the internet is because people are trapped in that thinking they have to. Like, you don't have to. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to clean your room. You can be a dirty, messy slob. You never have to make your bed. You don't have to eat your vegetables. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do there, boo-boo. So don't you worry your pretty little head about it. Oh, that doubled up. That was not good. Anyway. But yeah. So there's something I feel the need to try and say, and it has to do with politics and questions about politics. It has to do with discourse or communication and questioning whether or not discourse is happening, whether or not discourse is even possible. Yeah, it has to do with violence, political violence. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, there was the violent murder of a violent man a couple of weeks ago. I think he was a despicable, horrible instrument of hate and of, political bullshit. But then there was like a murder, and I also don't think murder's cool. And since then, there have been, more acts of violence, more public acts of violence. And there's been a lot of other crazy stuff too. The federal government pressuring companies to fire people for speech. That's not necessarily new, but it definitely feels different. What's that about? I do think it's true that the federal government has all along done what they are doing. But it feels different now. And does it feel different now just because I'm on
a different side, but I feel like I'm not on a different side. Like I feel like I've always been on the side of the people who are not platformed. We had McCarthyism. And I don't think McCarthyism ever really went away. It's just been like outsourced, distributed. But there is something, I don't know, but then also like with like Cambridge Analytica happened, and that's like incontrovertible, just like, oh yeah, it is true that like these platforms are meddling with our ideology, our subjectivity, our situatedness. Like it's just true. And not just Cambridge Analytica. Like there was also studies where like Meta or Facebook at the time was like, can we make people depressed? Let's do a study on this and see if we can like make people depressed by feeding them certain content. And then the whole Twitter files thing where the government was like leaning on these corporations to like siphon or silo certain things or, suppress certain things or whatever. But that wasn't surprising to me either. Like when that whole thing went down, I was more just kind of exhausted by everyone acting like they were surprised about it. Like there were some people who were like in the post left who really took up like the Twitter files thing. And I just think they handled it poorly because while they weren't necessarily wrong about what they were saying, the fact that they were acting surprised about it was like, are you really surprised by this? Like this has been happening the entire time. But yeah, I mean, it's true that was going on. But then now with like Trump and that FCC dude, why can't I remember his name right now? I knew it. Now I don't. Now I don't remember it. But like publicly putting pressure on like a broadcaster to fire a dude, and then they fired the dude. And it also wasn't just like publicly putting pressure on him. They're also about to like, the FCC is about to like change rules to allow some merger that's just like a blatant like violation of their standing policies. Like they're like, broadcasters can't have 40%, have more than 39% of the market. And then now this like merger that's going to go on with this broadcasting company, it's like more than double 39% they will get if this merger is successful. And the FCC is like entertaining that. And it's like, well, I don't know. That's kind of weird. Don't you guys talk about how monopolies are bad? And didn't these regulations get put in place to like avoid monopolies? And now you're about to go back on it. And so the whole Jimmy Kimmel thing wasn't just about him coming out and making a joke and then him getting fired because he made a joke. It was also about like the company, the parent company or whatever of these broadcasters and of these corporations wants to stay in the good graces of the FCC. So even if that guy, Brandon Carr, whatever, even if he didn't come out and publicly say like, we could do this the easy way or the hard way, like he can still let them know, hey, fire this guy and I'll approve your merger or whatever. I don't know, man. The government's a sham. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And has been all along, I think. Maybe not all along, but definitely our entire lifetimes. And it's kind of crazy to me that there are people acting surprised about that. At least people who associate themselves with, I don't know, political theory or like being in the know, like understanding, like being understanders of things. Like, sure, I don't hold it against like the average everyday person who's just like trying to get through life, just trying to work, trying to pay bills, trying to meet all their obligations, satisfy all their needs, and maybe some of their wants. I don't blame that person for being surprised because they don't have time to pick their head up and really stay tuned into all this dumb bullshit. But people who consider themselves politics understanders or theory understanders or whatever, or especially people who associate themselves with like radical politics, acting surprised about any of this. It's very frustrating because it's like, no, dude, you shouldn't be surprised. That's the whole point. Like, that's the whole point of being, interested and engaged with theory. It's because we understand that it's all a sham. Or I don't know, maybe that's just me and maybe I'm projecting. I know, like, when I was a kid, I didn't have anything. Didn't have parents, didn't have money, didn't have any stability. My siblings and I bounced around from, house to house, family to family for a while. And then I finally settled into a stable home or whatever when I was like, I don't know, 9 maybe. And then I lived there until I was 14, and I actually got kicked out on my birthday. Thank you. Congratulations. Got kicked out. It became a little street punk. So that was cool. But I didn't have anything. And like I said, my siblings and I developed like weird bonds, because for a while all we had was each other. We like didn't have anything. And then as we got a little older, like they were into other stuff, and like I was kind of on my own, and I like discovered skateboarding and discovered punk rock, and I was kind of alienated even from them, and they were like the only thing I had. And now our relationship is great. But we definitely went through a period of time where we were not really able to interact with each other, because I was just an angry little punk rocker and they were into their stuff. And I don't know, I don't want to speak for them, but I was definitely an asshole. Still am, I'm sure. But so like growing up as a kid, I never had like this image of the world being like a good place. And I never had this like belief that anything was functioning properly. Like everything was broken, everything was hell, everything was chaotic. And then I discovered, like by way of punk rock, by way of skateboarding, like I discovered, I don't know, philosophy, theory, radical hope, whatever. And at the time when I was younger, like that really did kind of take the form of like anarchist punk rock. Fuck the system, we believe like in a better world or whatever. So in order to like cope with the fact that we believe in a better world, but we're forever barred from that better world, we're gonna like, I don't know, just be shitty punk rockers. But it was very performative. But it was also like, I don't know, like there was a core of, like I said, radical hope. And I really do think, like I hold on to that core of radical hope, and I hold on to that belief in some kind of emancipation, and that belief that, I don't know, beauty is real, love is real, and all else be damned. But I think a lot of people discover that. I think a lot of people discover some kind of radical hope. And I think it takes a lot of different forms for people. And for some people, it's political ideologies. For some people, it's identity categories. It's belonging in a certain place. Like going back again, when I was younger, it was like a political ideology. It was like, we're anarcho-communists, and it was belonging in this category of, weirdo punk rocker misfits. We don't belong anywhere else. And so we're all here collectively non-belonging together, like the island of misfit toys. And we took pride in that. And that really bolstered up our sense of self. And we found ourselves like just adrift in this world where our sense of self and our actual embodied physical self, we were precarious, and we were always at risk, and we always felt at risk. Um, and so conspicuously performing this identity of anarchist or communist or punk rocker or whatever, bolstered our symbolic identity and comforted us. We were adrift. We were lost at sea. We were, in danger of being consumed by the howling whirlwind. So we would huddle together and have little kumbayas to comfort us in that long darkness. And I think everyone does that, and it is what it is. But the thing is, like, we also had lives. And we also had, like, I don't know, things to do that weren't just performing kumbayas, that weren't just sitting around in drum circles and giving each other back rubs, which I'm not saying we did that literally. I'm being metaphorical here. I don't know if I've ever sat in a drum circle and given someone a back rub. I don't think I would. I think that would be gross. I don't like being touched in general. It's weird. And I'm also weird about touching other people because I am so averse to touch. I don't want to be touching another person. Yeah. So, and also drum circles are not the coolest thing in the world. Although playing the drums is really cool. Anyway, like, we had lives, we had responsibilities. There were real moments for our thoughts and beliefs to become actions, and for those actions to cash out in real life and have consequences, either, positive or negative. But it wasn't this churn. It wasn't this internet. And there was a lot more tension too. Like, on the internet, you can just perform the speech act or whatever, or you can perform the symbolic identity. You can do the drum circle thing. And there's going to be a rotating cast of people who are involved. But if there's any tension, if there's any clash, like, you don't have to deal with that in the same way, because those people will just move on, or those people can just be blocked, or the community or the group or whatever will just kind of dissolve. And you'll go on to the next shiny object that will hold your attention for however long it holds your attention. So there's, like, a huge difference between embodied social activity or embodied social congress and this stuff that goes on the internet. And there are people who engage with the internet without this critical distance. There are people who engage with the internet and really do think that going on, recording an hour-long rant because I'm so lonely and I'm so starving for attention that I just want to record an hour-long rant and say some things. Or I want to go in the comment section of a video or of a live stream. Or I want to make a post or whatever. There are people who really do think that bears the same weight as embodied action, embodied activity, going and running like a little community grocery or community kitchen, or just having solidarity with your neighbors or your coworkers, or your fellow grocery shoppers at the grocery store, or whatever. Like, just being a person and having grace and giving grace to the other, and in the act of giving grace to the other, also giving grace back to yourself. People think there is no difference between saying something on the internet and accusing someone of being, I don't know, a bad person or a good person, like enthusiastically supporting the symbolic identity of some other person on the internet. That's definitely not the same as going out and doing real stuff. And going out and doing real stuff, once again, like, it's not as simple as, like, running a community kitchen or community garden or, a co-op or whatever. you can accomplish real stuff on the internet. You can accomplish real conversation, real communication, real discourse, even on the internet. But it's different. It's different from just like performing the identity or performing the role or making the statement, performing the speech act, or even supporting someone, supporting an influencer or a creator or whatever. But it seems to be the case that people are forgetting that. People are lacking that critical distance. People are convinced that engaging in this like simulation, engaging in this never-ending churn is like radical praxis. And I don't know, man. It's weird. It's weird to me. It seems a bit silly. But I don't know. Everything is a bit silly at the end of the day. Because it all comes back down to like that insecurity. That question of like me and everything else. Like we all just woke up one day and we were here. Like, have you ever woke up and like not been sure of where you are and had no knowledge of how you got there and tried to like piece together what happened and what you did and what happened to you or whatever? I don't know, maybe sometimes you have success, but I've definitely woken up multiple times and had no knowledge of where I am and how I got there and how badly I might have fucked up or whatever. And you reach a point where you have to stop. You have to stop trying to piece things together because you just don't know. The knowledge just doesn't exist. And you'll drive yourself crazy going over things and trying to figure it out. And you have to just, at some point, just be like, well, I will not ever know for sure. And I can't be too concerned with it. Like that's what we are. Like we're all, waking up in the aftermath of a huge party and no one's really sure of how we got here. And no one's really sure, like, did I do something really bad or was it okay? Like back in the day, like we used to make like skate videos. So like my homie Eric, shout out Stub, he had a video camera. And so we would take that around with us and record little skate videos, sponsor me videos to send it to this, the local skate shop. And sometimes we would record like footage of us at parties. And so every once in a while, and this was before cell phones, guys, before smartphones anyway, and before cell phones were common. Every once in a while, you would see footage of yourself because someone recorded it and you were like just wasted, super duper twisted at a party, totally blacked out, and you would see footage of yourself like covered in duct tape doing the robot and like saying ridiculous stuff or whatever, or jumping off a roof, or maybe peeing on somebody or getting peed on, or fighting somebody, or just being a huge gross toxic jerk. Whatever. Sometimes you would get to see footage of yourself. And that's always a bit uncanny because you're like, well, that's definitely me, but I don't remember it. You can't recognize yourself, even though it is yourself. There's no identification. And that's weird. But I think that's it. Like, I think identification. I think it comes back to the fact that we're all kind of casting about for something to identify with. And I think you just have to let it go, man. Like, I think you have to, at some point, just be like, that's a question for another day, like that will only ever be answered retroactively. And that's a question I can never answer for myself. Like that, like I have an identity and I have an identification, but it's mine. and it's almost irrelevant when it comes to the social field, or the symbolic order, because I can only see the inside of it. It's like you're on the inside of a big inflatable bubble, and you can see the inside, and you can examine the intricacies in the contours of the bubble, and you can really get to know it. But that will never inform the outside, and that outside is the impact you have on everyone else around you, and that outside is everyone else's interpretation of you through their symbolic lens. So while you should definitely be concerned with your impact, like you should be concerned with how much space is my bubble taking up? Is my bubble crushing someone else? Is my bubble kind of imposing or encroaching or making it hard for someone else in their bubble? You have to reach a point of just like, I will never know. Like it's just this ongoing thing that can never be understood or known or even really fully controlled. So you have to kind of give up on it, and you have to say, well, I can understand the inside of it to a point. And I just have to be content with the inside, and I have to try to steer this bubble in a way that, does the least damage possible, hopefully does some good along the way. And leave it at that, and stop being fascinated. Stop looking at that old grainy video footage of you peeing on someone or jumping off a roof or being covered in shaving cream and duct tape. Stop looking at it. I know it's fascinating. I know it's potentially horrifying. It is horrifying. It's like, oh, there's me. What am I? Am I a golem? Am I a zombie? But you can't allow yourself to become fascinated, because that fascination is tranquilizing. And that fascination will keep you there sitting on the couch, just objectified. And you have to understand, like, oh, I have to get off the couch. I have stuff to do. I'm going to go hard flip that 9 stair today. I can't sit around all day staring at the video footage from last night. I want to get up and go do something. But yeah, man, identity. People need to like chill the fuck out with trying to identify themselves. Doesn't matter. It does matter. When I say it doesn't matter, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, because it definitely does matter. But I also know that there are definitely some people who would like take that the wrong way. Because it definitely does matter. But it doesn't matter, I think, as much as people think it does. Because there's only so much you can do. You can only ever be in control of your intentions. You can't be in control of their impact. You can't be in control of how other people interpret them. So leave it at that. I don't know. Like, this rant kind of just spun out of control and went nowhere, I think. But also, I don't know, maybe I kept someone out there company while you were working, or doing your thing, doing whatever it is you're doing right now. So shout out to you. Big ups to all the homies. I think I'm just frustrated. I think violence sucks. I don't think there's any difference between violence and political violence. I think adding the caveat political violence to something is just an attempt to disavow our own complicity. I think violence is not a good thing. I also know that it's inevitable. Not to say that it's necessary, but I know that it's inevitable. It's just simply not possible to avoid violence or to avoid complicity in violence. And so I think we all need to be more concerned with maybe the minimization of it, rather than with moralizing about it, rather than with trying to grandstand, or rather than with trying to develop some political narrative that ultimately serves only to support and bolster your own symbolic identity at the end of the day, or whatever symbolic identity category you're glomming onto. I do think it's I don't know. I think it's absurd. I think the internet is fucking killing us all. It's driving us insane, and it's making us crazy, and it's making us hate ourselves. And because we hate ourselves, we're hating others as well. And we can't really incorporate that. We can't incorporate because we're seeing the golem. We're seeing this reflected golem of ourselves, and we're horrified, and we're fascinated, and we're like, that's my activity, but I don't identify with that. And because of that dissonance and because of that disconnect, we're blaming it on everyone else. I think we all need to just be able to say, damn, things are bad. They could be so much better. I know I'm guilty. I know everyone else is guilty. Let's stop worrying so much about degrees of guilt. Let's stop worrying so much about trying to moralize. I don't know, and let's be adults about it. I don't know, but see, look, saying that and hearing myself say that, like, I know there's definitely going to be people, if you listen to that, you're going to be like, oh, well, you can just disavow and you can just like retreat from these contradictions and blah, 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 and this and that. No, man, I don't think it's that at all. I do think there's definitely horrible things going on. And I think there are bad people who are doing bad things and bad people who are accelerating those bad things and making them worse. And I do think it matters. And I do think in general, we need to push to better the material conditions of people across the globe universally. And however you can accomplish that, however you can effectively work toward that, I think is good. And I think we should all be engaged in doing that. So if that means joining a socialist party or a communist party or a democratic party even, or if that means opposing people who are, avowed reactionaries or whatever, yeah, like do all those things. But don't do them so much online. Don't do them so much performatively. Like actually work toward the betterment of your own material conditions and the material conditions of others. And I don't think claiming to be, some specific type of activist or some specific type of political person is going to achieve that. I think find a way to actually effectively engage in working toward change. Don't just sit back and talk about it. Don't just sit back and say the words and perform speech acts. There's too much of that. What I'm doing right now is part of the problem. Like this whole performative, neurotic, hysterical spin out. It's part of the problem. You have better things to do right now. Now I understand maybe if you're working and you like to listen to stuff. Yeah, dude, because me too. I definitely like to have something going on when I'm working, and listening to music just constantly while I'm working is really, really weirdly alienating. Now in the before times, back before we all had earbuds and headphones and shit, I think it was cool. You would have the boombox going and it was just the radio. And it was like, yeah, music and, some commercials and some people talking and maybe some traffic and weather and news. But your ears were open and you weren't closed off and you weren't in this self-contained bubble. So that's cool. But when I made the transition to listening to music in my earbuds all the time, music was weirdly alienating. Now, it was partly probably because it was just music. It was like YouTube, or it was play music back then. Like when I made the switch to having earbuds, it was just playlists of music. There was no commercial interruptions. There was no news, weather, traffic. And so that was weird. But it's also the case that you're walled off from the rest of the world. So you're walking around the shop and you got your earbuds in, and maybe someone says something to you and you're like, huh? What's up? Or maybe not. Maybe they see that you have your earbuds in and they don't say anything to you. But it's just this more, and that's what the commodity is doing to us, man. That's what the system is doing to us, bro. It's walling us off. It's alienating us. It's atomizing us even more. And we're all in these self-contained little bubbles. And we have to understand that bubble has an inside and has an outside. And the art of being human is kind of navigating that in between space. It's the little electrical arc in the spark plug. You can't stay on one side or the other because the engine won't run. You need the arc. You need the jump. But anyway, so yeah, like if you're working and you're just listening to this because you prefer to mix it up, you prefer to listen to people talk while you're working, that's one thing. But if, you know, you're like, oh, I have to listen to this person talk now. I have nothing else going on. This is my political engagement. I need to tune into what my internet person is saying. Don't do that, dude. Don't. Go do something else. Go take a walk, dude. Go take a walk without earbuds in. Listen to the wind, the trees, the wildlife, the cars, the river. Maybe if you live next to a river, I don't know. Listen to the wind blowing between the cactus if you're down here in Arizona with me. Go to the bowling alley, dude, with friends and family, or go by yourself. I used to do stuff like that. Just go do something, man, and then maybe come back and do something else. But like, don't just stay on the fucking internet all the time. Don't just think that like performing the speech act of saying, I am a Marxist, I am a communist, I am a reactionary groiper, booger-eating dickhead, like whatever it is. I think it's absurd that people believe they can effectively label themselves. I know I can't. I know I've been having conversations with several people about this recently in the wake of all this stuff where, you know, all this violence continues to happen and people are trying to disavow the violence and people are trying to craft political narratives, and things do feel different to me. And I'm wondering, why do they feel different? Because has anything really changed? And yes, things have changed, but also how have they changed is what I'm trying to understand, because I never believed in America. I never believed in the government. I never believed in political structures that existed around me. So what's different? I'm trying to understand that and having conversations with people and like, well, what do I identify as? Well, I don't know, man. That's not up for me. That's not up to me to decide. That's not a question for me to answer. Now, I do have an idea for myself. But again, I'm on the inside of the bubble, and the inside of the bubble is different from the outside of the bubble. And while they do inform and shape each other, they definitely don't determine each other. And I think an awful lot of people right now are taking the inside and they're trying to assert it on everyone else around them. And they're thinking that the assertion of that is political action, and the assertion of that is effective, and the assertion of that is worth doing. But really, you're just imposing on other people something that they shouldn't have imposed on them, because you have nothing to do with it ultimately at the end of the day. Now, you do have an awful lot to do with it, but you don't have control over it. You don't have the final say. So I think we should all stop acting like we have the final say. But anyway, thanks for listening to the Toxic Manosphere podcast. I'm going to go do something else. I think I'm going to go, I don't know, take a walk maybe. We'll see you on the next one, folks.